Cruising on the seven seas has been popular for some time, and I have no doubt in the future it will be very popular again. But with the current state of affairs, the way things are right now, there's no cruising happening in the world. So what is going to happen? What's going to change when we get back to cruising? I've heard a few things, and I've got a few ideas about how the cruise industry can make some big leaps forward to improve things after all of this is said and done. Now, it should come as no surprise to anyone that onboard cruise ships, viruses, illnesses are prevalent. They do happen just because you've got a lot of people in very close quarters. Comparing a cruise to a land destination, wherever it is, maybe it's the Grand Canyon, think about how much space you have around you, or even a theme park. Like Walt Disney World, you still have a tremendous amount of space around you, a lot of fresh air all around you, even as you're walking through ride queues. The same can't be said for the cruise line. Sometimes you're inside in a theater or at a dinner or wherever you are, and it's totally cut off from the outside. Maybe there's some vent somewhere, but it's a lot of people in close quarters. So knowing that we have closer quarters on board the cruise ships, what can the cruise lines do to make things better for cruisers? Option one, more space, is one that we'd all love, but that's just not possible at sea. It's a finite amount of space. Even the largest cruise ships in the world are only so large, and there are indoor places on those cruise ships, so you can't add more space. We've got to work with the space that we have. Let's start off with boarding the ship, and in my research for this video, I found that the Disney Cruise Line uses kind of a paper method where you say, have you had a fever? Check no or yes. Have you had other symptoms? Check no or yes, and then you step on board. But believe it or not, in other countries and other cruise lines, they use different methods. From what I've heard, in other countries, they'll actually scan your temperature using either camera technology or one of those special readers they put near your head. Doesn't hurt at all, just like a light on your head to read your temperature before you step on a ship. Again, it's not every country, it's not every cruise line, but some of them have done this before. Again, it's not every single cruise line and not every single country allows this, but there are some checks on some cruise ships. Does it prevent some illnesses? I would imagine it has some effect. I'm sure it's not perfect. I'm sure it's not. But I would imagine it has at least partial effect. For those who are running 101-degree fever, we want to know about it before you step on board. I believe that this is something that Disney and the rest of the cruise lines could really start to implement more worldwide. I'm not sure about some of the legality of checking individuals' temperatures before they step on a cruise ship. Not sure about that. If anyone knows, let me know in the comments. Maybe that would go against some of the rights we have here in the United States, but maybe you could opt in. You could opt in, you could say yes, everyone kind of feels more comfortable. Maybe most people wouldn't opt out, just as an idea. Just some ideas to throw out there, but checking your temperature before you go on board, why not? It makes us all a little safer. Now, once you're on board, things change. Of course, we're all on board together, part of the same big family. We've got to look out for each other, washing our hands, doing all these things. And I found that not every single cruise line actually requires that guests wash their hands before they go into, let's say, a buffet line. On the Disney Cruise Line, there is a cast member standing by that requires you to wash your hands before you get in that line. But even with that cast member there, I have seen guests walk by and not wash their hands before getting to the buffet line. I know it's something that we all need to work on together. I think it's important every single time, no matter where you are, even if you're coming from your room where you just washed your hands, there is a handle, there is an elevator button, there's something between you and that buffet handle, something. And I think that more washing of hands and more requirements to wash hands, whether it's going to the buffet or even just going to the stage show, going to a movie on board, more of these stations all around. On that note, the Disney Cruise Line Kids Club have these automated hand washing stations where kids or adults can stick their hands in, and you have an automatic wash cycle that washes with soap and water on your hands. Put your hands in there for 20 seconds, 15 seconds, whatever it is, and it's done. It is extremely convenient, and maybe that would inspire more guests to wash their hands on board. It's just something easier for guests to do. Just stick your hands in here and it's done. Now, on that note, another idea that I heard, why not have the buffet line make it so it's the servers serve you? So the person standing behind the counter has the tongs. No one else touches the tongs. Just the person behind the counter, and they hand you whatever you want. You can have as much or as little as you want of anything. You just need to ask for it. They're gonna do all of the touching. I feel like that would solve so much, because those tongs that go from guest to guest to guest, no matter how clean your hands are, you never know. You just never know. So why not have it so that the server behind the counter does all the serving? I like that idea. I think this is an idea that all of the cruise lines around the globe should start to implement immediately. Immediately, because I think this would solve a lot of problems. We don't know. We all want to wash our hands, look out for each other, but maybe a young kid forgot to, or didn't realize that they touched something. There's no one really to blame here. We just have to kind of take responsibility together, and this is a great way for the cruise industry to really help us out in that way. They touch all the tongs. That would be perfect. Disney Cruise Line already does this to a degree for some of the different areas. Like when you want the smoked salmon, you actually have to ask the server or the cook behind the counter, hey, could I get 3 or 4 or 5 pieces of smoked salmon, or whatever it is behind that meat counter. They have to touch it, and there's a glass, protecting all the meat so that it stays sanitary, kind of closed doors, glass behind it. They take all of these steps to make sure that guests are safe on board. It's just that next step beyond that really needs to happen. Now, in addition, there's another thought that was brought to my attention. Michael, what about those sprayers that you see that are operating in Asia and some other countries where people are going through and they're being sprayed by sanitary spray, whatever it is, bleach spray, I don't know what it is. But let's pretend we had this on board. Would it be something that would be viable? Perhaps it would be. But to be honest with you, I don't think this is something we'd see on board, just because it would be a whole body thing, and we're not going to be under this global situation forever. We're not. It's going to go away. It's already on its way. We're going to be through it eventually, but it's going to take a little bit more time. But our hands touch most things. I would imagine the rest of our bodies, elbow, arm, I think that's not really touching anything else. It's the hands we really have to worry about. Another thought I had was about those ports of call that we go to. When we go to ports of call, we might go shopping, we might do excursions, we interact with other people who have not been on the cruise ship, and perhaps, we don't know, maybe they had something as well. When we come back on board, perhaps it's another opportunity for another temperature check. Most cruise lines have hand sanitizer like right outside the gangway, so you can kind of wash your hands before you step on board, which is really, really important. But obviously, interacting with other people outside of the cruise ship, you never know. And let's say you were checked temperature as you step back on board. Let's say you had 100-degree fever as you try to step back on board the cruise ship and you're in the Bahamas. How do you get back home? Would the cruise line have to fly you home? There are so many questions here. I think that taking as many simple steps as possible, starting with those tongs in the buffet lines, would really go a long way. Now, I know we talked about a serious topic in today's video, but I want to reassure you that after all of this is said and done, the first thing that I'm going to do is schedule another Disney cruise, because I cannot wait to get back on board. And I know that there are risks when you step anywhere, when you go anywhere in the world, but I love cruising, and I think Disney goes a really long way to make cruising as safe as possible, and I think once we step back on board, they're going to be even safer. Those are my thoughts about how the cruise industry can make cruising even safer. It's already great in my opinion, but these steps could really make a big difference in the future. Those are my thoughts. I'd love to hear from you. Do you think the cruise line could implement some or perhaps all of these different strategies, or do you have a totally different idea? I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Thank you so much for being a part of the magic with me today. Until next time, have a magical day.